Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
I returned from a 2-week vacation to find my house emptied, a sold sign on the lawn, and my mother and sister waiting with cruel smiles. They mocked me about being homeless, revealing they sold my house to pay off my sister Amanda's massive debts. Instead of breaking down, I smiled mysteriously. "What's so funny?" they snapped. I calmly replied, "The house you sold was actually setting up the shocking revelation that would turn this betrayal on its head." My unexpected reaction hinted at a reversal they never saw coming. I never thought my own family would betray me like this. My name is Calhoun. I'm 32 years old, and until 2 weeks ago, I owned a beautiful 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Portland. I had worked hard for that house, saving every penny while my colleagues splurged on luxury cars and exotic vacations. Growing up, I learned early that I needed to be self-sufficient. My mother Diane, now 58, made it clear from my childhood that I was expected to stand on my own 2 feet. "Be a man," she would say whenever I needed help. Meanwhile, my sister Amanda, who's 35 now, received a completely different type of parenting. "Amanda needs extra support," Mom would explain as she paid off another of my sister's maxed-out credit cards or covered her rent when she blew her paycheck on designer clothes. "She's more sensitive than you are." This pattern started when we were kids. If I got a B on a test, I was lectured about applying myself more. When Amanda got a C, Mom would call the teacher to argue about the grading system. I received practical gifts for birthdays, savings, bonds, and clothes, while Amanda got whatever extravagant item she had been begging for. The dynamic worsened after Dad died when I was 12. He had been the balancing force in our family, the one person who seemed to truly see me. "You're going to outshine us all someday, Cal," he told me, just weeks before the heart attack that took him from us. "Just keep your head down and work hard." After his death, it was as if Mom's favoritism no longer had any counterweight. Amanda became increasingly entitled, dropping out of college twice with no consequences while I worked part-time jobs to supplement my scholarship. When I graduated with honors in computer science, Mom attended the ceremony but spent most of it talking about how Amanda was finding herself through her 3rd attempt at higher education. Despite everything, I built a good life for myself. I worked my way up at a software company, eventually becoming a senior engineer with a comfortable salary. 3 years ago, I finally had enough saved for a down payment on my dream home. The day I got the keys, I invited Mom and Amanda to see it. Their reaction was telling. "Seems like a lot of house for one person," Mom said, eyeing the spacious living room. "Must be nice to have everything handed to you," Amanda muttered, though nothing had been handed to me at all. 6 months ago, Amanda lost her job at a financial services company. There were whispers of embezzlement, though she insisted it was a misunderstanding. Mom immediately offered to let her move back home, rent-free of course. Then the phone calls started. Amanda needed money for unexpected expenses. The amounts kept growing. 2 months before my vacation, I received a call from Amanda in tears. "I made a mistake," she sobbed. "I borrowed money from some people. They're threatening me." When I asked how much she owed, the figure made me dizzy. $228,000, an impossible sum that she had no way to repay. "You have a good job," she said. "You could help me." I refused, and the cold silence from both her and Mom told me I'd crossed some invisible line by not coming to Amanda's rescue yet again. That's when I made a decision that would ultimately save me. I contacted a lawyer specializing in asset protection. Something about Amanda's desperation had alarmed me. The way she looked at my house during her last visit, asking pointed questions about my equity and mortgage. Insurance, my lawyer called it, just in case. I never imagined how soon I would need it. When my team successfully launched a major software project ahead of schedule, I decided to reward myself with a proper vacation. 2 weeks in Hawaii, disconnected from technology and family drama. The morning of my departure, Amanda called. "When will you be back?" she asked casually. Too casually. "Not sure," I lied. "Maybe 3 weeks, maybe longer." Something in her voice made me glad I'd taken precautions. The call ended with her saying, "Have fun in your big empty house when you get back." I should have recognized the threat in her words. Instead, I boarded my flight, unaware that my mother and sister were already plotting to take everything I had worked for. Hawaii was exactly what I needed. For the first time in years, I felt the tension leave my shoulders as I walked along pristine beaches and hiked to breathtaking waterfalls. I had promised myself a true digital detox, no email, no social media, minimal phone use. My neighbor Jack had agreed to keep an eye on my place, collecting mail and watering the indoor plants I cherished. On my third day there, I met Audrey. She was staying in the same hotel, also traveling alone after finishing a major work project. We hit it off immediately, spending the next several days exploring the island together. "Tell me about your family," she asked one evening as we watched the sunset from a beachfront restaurant. I found myself opening up more than I had intended, describing the lifetime of favoritism and subtle put-downs. "That sounds like classic narcissistic family dynamics," Audrey said. She worked as a therapist specializing in family trauma. "Your mother is what we call a narcissist, and she's established a family system with Amanda as the golden child and you as the scapegoat." "Those terms seem harsh," I said, uncomfortable with labeling my family, despite everything. "The truth often is," she replied gently. "Have you ever wondered why you work so hard for approval you never receive?" Her question hit me hard. Throughout my life, I had been chasing validation from my mother that never came. Every achievement was met with indifference, or somehow twisted to make Amanda the focus again. Even buying my house, a significant milestone by any standard, had been diminished. Meanwhile, back home, my mother and sister were setting their plan in motion. I would later learn the details through security camera footage and neighbors' accounts. The day after I left, they arrived at my house with a locksmith. "My son lost his key while traveling," my mother told the man. "We need to get in to check on things." The locksmith hesitated but ultimately believed her story. Once inside, they began systematically going through my personal papers, looking for the deed to the house and any other financial documents they could find. They found old paperwork from when I first bought the place, documents that included my signature. What they didn't know was that those documents were no longer valid. Over the next few days, they moved quickly. Amanda had connections to a real estate agent willing to handle a private sale without asking too many questions. The buyer was a man named Thomas Reed, who had just received a large inheritance and was looking to purchase property quickly, in cash. "The owner is abroad and has authorized us to handle everything," my mother told the agent. "He wants a quick, quiet sale." With forged authorization documents bearing a reasonable facsimile of my signature, they listed the house significantly below market value to ensure a fast sale. Thomas Reed jumped at the opportunity, not questioning why such a desirable property was available so cheaply. While I was swimming with sea turtles and hiking volcanic trails, my mother and sister were emptying my home. They sold most of my furniture through online marketplaces. My personal items, photos, awards, the watch my father had left me were either discarded or kept by Amanda as trophies. What drove them to such extremes? Amanda's debts were even more serious than I had realized. Beyond credit card debt and personal loans, she had borrowed from a loan shark connected to a local gambling operation. She had been feeding a gambling addiction for years, hiding it from everyone while the debts mounted. The people she owed money to had started making threats, not just against her, but against my mother as well. By the end of my first week in Hawaii, they had a buyer and a closing date. By the end of my second week, the sale was complete. $210,000 transferred into an account my sister had set up. Not enough to cover all her debts, but enough to pay off the most dangerous people she owed. The night before my return flight, I finally checked my email. Among the marketing messages and work updates was a notice from my bank about unusual account activity. I dismissed it as routine banks often send alerts when you're traveling. I had no idea this was the first warning sign of what awaited me. That same night, I tried calling Jack to let him know I'd be home the next day. The call went straight to voicemail. Unusual, but not alarming. I left a message and went to bed, excited to return to my comfortable home after 2 wonderful but exhausting weeks of adventure. Audrey and I exchanged contact information before parting ways at the airport. "Remember what I said," she told me. "Toxic family patterns don't change unless there are consequences." I nodded, thinking her advice was insightful but not immediately relevant to my life. I had no idea how prophetic her words would prove to be, or that I would be calling her for help within 24 hours. As my plane touched down, I felt refreshed and ready to tackle whatever challenges awaited at work. I never imagined that my biggest challenge would be finding my home stripped bare and my life upended by the two people who should have loved me most in the world. The taxi dropped me off in front of my house around 3 in the afternoon. At first, I thought I had given the driver the wrong address. There was a moving truck in the driveway, and strangers were carrying furniture inside furniture I had never seen before. A large sold sign stood where my carefully tended garden had been. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, my suitcase beside me, trying to make sense of the scene. That's when I noticed my mother's car parked across the street, and beside it, Amanda's red convertible, a recent purchase she definitely couldn't afford. They were sitting on a bench in the park opposite my house, watching. When they saw me notice them, they crossed the street with triumphant expressions that made my blood run cold. "Welcome home," Amanda said with a smirk. "Oh wait, it's not your home anymore." "What have you done?" I asked, my voice barely audible. My mother's face showed no remorse, no hint of the maternal love that should have been there. "What we had to do. Amanda needed help, and you refused." The new homeowner, a man in his 40s, approached us curiously. "Is everything okay here? Are you friends of the previous owner?" "I am the owner," I said firmly. The man looked confused. "No, I bought this house last week. I have all the paperwork." He pulled out his phone to show me digital copies of the closing documents, complete with what appeared to be my signature. "That's not my signature," I said, the reality of what had happened beginning to sink in. "I never sold this house." "Yes, you did," my mother interrupted. "Through us, your authorized agents. Everything is legal and finalized." The man looked increasingly uncomfortable. "Look, I don't want any trouble. I bought this house in good faith." "There won't be any trouble," Amanda assured him, shooting me a warning glance. "My brother is just surprised because it all happened while he was away. He knew about the sale." The man nodded uncertainly and returned to directing the movers, casting concerned glances our way. I turned to my mother and sister, struggling to keep my voice steady. "How could you do this?" "Easily," Amanda replied, her voice dripping with resentment. "You've always had everything handed to you on a silver platter." The irony of her statement was staggering. "I worked for everything I have," I responded. "Had," my mother corrected with a cold smile. "Everything you had." They explained their scheme with disturbing pride, describing how they'd found the papers, forged my signature, and rushed through the sale. "Where are my things?" I demanded, thinking of the irreplaceable mementos of my father. "Sold most of it," Amanda shrugged. "Dumped the rest. Those stupid plants you loved so much are probably dead by now." The casual cruelty took my breath away. "And Jack? My neighbor?" "We told him you'd asked us to house sit instead," my mother explained. "He was suspicious at first, but we convinced him." I looked at these women, my family, by blood, but strangers in every way that mattered, and saw something I'd been denying my entire life. They didn't love me. Perhaps they never had. "You always land on your feet," my mother said dismissively when she saw the pain in my eyes. "You'll be fine. Amanda needed this more than you did." "Needed to steal from me?" I asked incredulously. "Needed to stay alive," Amanda hissed. "Those people would have hurt me." "What people?" "The people I owe money to," she admitted. "Gambling debts. They were threatening me." "So your solution was to steal my house rather than get help for your addiction?" Amanda's face hardened. "Not all of us are perfect like you, Calhoun." "Perfect?" I laughed bitterly. "You think my life has been perfect? While you were getting bailed out of every mistake, I was working 2 jobs to put myself through college." My mother stepped between us. "That's enough. What's done is done. You're young. You have a good job. You'll buy another house." "While Amanda continues gambling away everything she touches?" I asked. "Don't you dare judge me," Amanda spat. "You have no idea what my life has been like, living in your shadow." "My shadow?" I was genuinely confused. "Mom has favored you since the day you were born." "That's not true," my mother interrupted, her voice taking on a strange, distant quality. "I never favored Amanda. I just recognized that she needed more help. Because she was the reminder of Dad you wanted to keep," I said, a realization dawning. "And I was the reminder of him you wanted to forget." My mother's face changed, a flash of something guilt, perhaps crossing her features. "You look just like him," she said quietly. "Act like him too. Always so righteous, so responsible." "Those are bad things?" I asked. "They are when the responsible one walks out on his family," she suddenly shouted. I stared at her in shock. Dad didn't walk out, he died. After he told me he was leaving, she said bitterly. Heart attack came the day after he said he wanted a divorce. Convenient timing, wasn't it? This revelation hit me like a physical blow. My entire understanding of my family history tilted on its axis. You're lying, I said, though part of me feared she wasn't. Believe what you want, she replied. The point is, you're just like him. Think you're better than everyone else. Well, now you're homeless, just like you would have left us. Her words cut deep, but I forced myself to stay calm. Getting emotional would only give them more satisfaction. Besides, they had no idea what was coming. So what now? I asked, keeping my voice even. You've sold my house, stolen or destroyed my possessions. Are you expecting me to just accept this and walk away? What choice do you have? Amanda laughed. The sale is final. The money's already been used to pay off my debts. Now you know how it feels to have nothing, my mother added. I looked at my house, my beautiful home, that I had lovingly maintained and made my own now in the hands of strangers. I thought about all the irreplaceable items now gone forever. Family photos, my father's watch, the first edition books I had collected, all destroyed or sold off by the people who should have protected me. I should have been devastated. Perhaps they expected me to break down, to beg them for help now that I was the one in need. Instead, I felt an odd sense of clarity. For the first time, I was seeing my family without the filter of obligation and hope that had colored my perception for years. You know, I said slowly, I always suspected something like this might happen. Their smug expressions faltered slightly. What do you mean? Amanda asked. I smiled. The kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. I mean, I've been watching you both for years. I've seen how you operate, and I've been preparing. Their confidence began to waver as I maintained my composure in the face of their cruelty. They had expected me to crumble, to become as desperate as Amanda. When I didn't, uncertainty crept into their expressions. What's so funny? My mother snapped, irritated by my unexpected calm. The house you sold, I began, savoring the moment of revelation, the house you sold was actually not in my name anymore, I finished, watching their faces shift from smug satisfaction to confusion. What are you talking about? My mother demanded. 6 months ago, I transferred ownership of this house to an LLC I created called Calhoun Properties, I explained calmly. The deed you found and used to forge documents was outdated. The house hasn't legally been in my personal name since February. Amanda's face paled. You're lying. Check the county property records, I suggested. They're public. My sister fumbled with her phone, her hands shaking as she searched online. I watched as the blood drained from her face. This can't be right, she whispered. My mother grabbed the phone from her, staring at the screen in disbelief. You did this on purpose, she accused, her voice rising. You set us up. I protected myself. I corrected. There's a difference. Looking back, I could pinpoint exactly when I'd decided to take this precaution. It was during Amanda's last visit to my home, 3 months before my vacation. She'd wandered through each room, asking pointed questions about my mortgage and what I thought the place was worth. At one point, I caught her taking photos of my home office where I kept important documents. When I asked what she was doing, she laughed it off as getting decoration ideas. That night, after she left, I found my filing cabinet slightly ajar, though I was certain I had locked it. Nothing seemed missing, but the unease stayed with me. The next day, I called a lawyer specializing in asset protection. Unfortunately, I see this kind of thing all the time, the lawyer told me. Family financial exploitation is more common than most people realize. On his advice, I created an LLC and transferred the house into the company's name. It was a simple procedure, requiring some paperwork and minor fees, but it created a legal barrier between my personal assets and anyone trying to claim them. So what does this mean? Amanda asked, her voice small now. It means you sold a house that wasn't yours to sell, I replied. The signatures you forged were for a deed that's no longer valid. The sale is fraudulent. My mother's expression hardened. No one will believe you. It's your word against ours. Actually, it's documented legal fact against your word, I corrected. Plus, I have security cameras inside and outside the house. I can see who comes and goes even when I'm not there. I watched you breaking in while I was in Hawaii. This was partly a bluff. I did have security cameras, but I hadn't checked them yet. Still, the way Amanda flinched told me my guess about their actions was correct. "You can't prove anything," my mother insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. "The cameras, the property records, the paper trail of the LLC formation. It's more than enough," I said. "And then there's Ryan." "Who's Ryan?" Amanda asked, confusion replacing her smugness. "The real buyer of the house," I explained. "Or rather, the person behind Thomas Reed, the name you know him by." This was where luck and coincidence had played in my favor in a way I couldn't have planned. The world of real estate investing in our city was relatively small. Ryan, as it turned out, was Audrey's brother. When I'd mentioned my neighborhood during our conversations in Hawaii, she had immediately recognized it. "My brother just bought a house there," she had said. "Some private sale that came up suddenly. Great deal, apparently." The description was too specific to be coincidence. When I showed her a picture of my house, her surprise confirmed my suspicions. A few phone calls later, and Ryan understood the situation. He agreed to play along until I returned, documenting everything about the suspicious sale. "You're telling me the buyer was working with you?" my mother asked incredulously. "Not originally," I admitted. "But once he realized he was participating in a fraudulent transaction, he was very cooperative. He's been recording all your interactions." Amanda began to cry, but these weren't the manipulative tears I'd seen so many times before. These were the tears of someone who finally realizes they've gone too far. "What happens now?" she asked through sobs. "That depends on you," I said. "The way I see it, you have two options. One, we can involve the police. Fraud, forgery, grand theft, these are serious felonies with serious consequences." "You would send your own family to jail?" my mother asked, outraged. "My own family just tried to render me homeless," I replied evenly. "So yes, I would." "What's the second option?" Amanda asked quietly. "You come clean. Return what you can of my belongings. Work out a repayment plan for what's been lost or sold. Most importantly, Amanda gets help for her gambling addiction, and you, Mom, get therapy to address whatever issues have led you to enable and participate in this behavior." They looked at each other, silent communication passing between them. "What about Amanda's debts?" my mother finally asked. "The dangerous people she owes money to?" "Those can be handled legally," I said. "Bankruptcy if necessary. But throwing me under the bus isn't the solution." Amanda wiped her tears. "They'll hurt me if I don't pay." "There are legal protections," I assured her, softening slightly at the genuine fear in her eyes. "But you have to be honest about everything." The new owners, or rather, Ryan posing as Thomas Reed, had noticed our intense conversation and approached cautiously. "Is everything okay out here?" he asked, making eye contact with me briefly to confirm we were on the same page. "No," I replied honestly, "but it will be. There's been a misunderstanding about the sale of this house." "Misunderstanding?" he repeated. "These people," I gestured to my mother and sister, "did not have the authority to sell this property. I never authorized the sale, and I have documentation proving the house belongs to an LLC, not to me personally." Ryan played his part perfectly, expressing appropriate shock and concern. "Are you saying I've been defrauded?" "Yes," I confirmed. "Though I'm prepared to make things right, the sale can proceed legitimately if you're still interested, or we can undo the transaction entirely." My mother interrupted. "You can't just undo a house sale. Actually, when fraud is involved, you can." I corrected her. Amanda had gone very quiet, staring at the ground. "The money's gone," she whispered. "Most of it, anyway. I paid Curtis." "Curtis?" I asked. "The main guy I owed," she explained. $170,000. The rest went to credit cards and other loans. I sighed heavily. "Then you have a serious problem. Because that money was obtained fraudulently." "What are you going to do?" my mother asked, her defiance giving way to worry. I looked at my house, at Ryan, and then back at my family. "I'm going to reclaim my property, legally. And you're going to face the consequences of your actions." For the first time in my life, I saw fear in my mother's eyes. Not fear for Amanda, but fear for herself. "You would really do this to us?" she asked. "You did this to yourselves," I replied. "I'm just refusing to be your victim." As the reality of their situation sank in, I felt no joy, only a profound sadness that it had come to this. These were the people who should have loved me most in the world, yet they had been willing to destroy my life without hesitation. Ryan, still in character as Thomas Reed, excused himself to make some calls. Once he was out of earshot, Amanda broke down completely. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "I didn't want to do it. But I was desperate. Desperate enough to make your brother homeless?" I asked. "I didn't think it would hurt you that much," she admitted. "You always figure things out. You're always fine." Her words revealed the fundamental disconnect in how my family saw me. Because I didn't fall apart publicly, because I solved my own problems instead of making them everyone else's responsibility, they believed I was invulnerable. My self-sufficiency had been used against me, twisted into a justification for exploitation. "I'm not superhuman," I told her quietly. "I feel pain and betrayal just like anyone else." My mother remained silent, her expression unreadable. I wondered if she was calculating her next move or truly processing the magnitude of what they had done. "So, what happens now?" Amanda finally asked. "Now," I said, "we start dealing with the mess you've created." The next few days were a blur of legal consultations, police reports, and painful conversations. I temporarily moved into a hotel while sorting out the house situation. Ryan, revealing his true identity, agreed to unwind the fraudulent transaction. As a real estate investor, he understood the legal complications and was surprisingly sympathetic to my situation. "Family can be the worst sometimes," he said as we signed paperwork in my lawyer's office. "My parents emptied my college fund when I was 19. That's actually how I got into real estate. Had to find my own way to pay for school." The police took the case seriously. Detectives Henderson and Lopez interviewed me for hours, reviewing the evidence I'd gathered. The security footage clearly showed my mother and sister entering my home multiple times while I was away, removing items and bringing in strangers who appeared to be appraisers or potential buyers. "This is one of the more elaborate family fraud cases I've seen," Detective Henderson commented. "They really thought this through." When confronted with the evidence, Amanda broke down completely. She admitted everything, from the initial planning to the final sale. Her confession implicated my mother as the mastermind, something I had suspected but still found hard to accept. "Diane kept saying it wasn't really stealing," Amanda told the detectives through tears. "She said Calhoun owed us because he'd always had it easier." The irony was painful to hear. Throughout my life I had worked harder for less recognition, while Amanda had been given endless second chances. My mother was less forthcoming. When arrested, she immediately called a lawyer and refused to speak to investigators. Her silence spoke volumes about her priorities even now. Self-preservation came first. As the legal process unfolded, I found unexpected support from people I hadn't realized were in my corner. My boss offered me paid leave to deal with the situation. Colleagues I barely knew outside of work volunteered to help me recover and replace stolen items. Jack, my neighbor, was horrified when he learned what had happened and offered his spare bedroom until my house was legally mine again. "I knew something wasn't right," he said, regret heavy in his voice. "They had a key, but they didn't know where anything was. They didn't even know which day the garbage went out. I should have called you. They manipulated you," I assured him. "That's what they do." The most surprising support came from Audrey. Though we'd only known each other for 2 weeks, she flew in from Chicago when I called her about the situation. "I work with families like yours every day," she explained over dinner at my hotel. "But it's usually much harder to get clients to recognize the patterns. You're already miles ahead of most people in similar situations." Her professional insight helped me process the emotional impact of the betrayal. The hardest part for many adult children of narcissists is accepting that the parent will never be who they needed them to be, she told me. That grief is real and deserves to be honored. While I was rebuilding my life, Amanda was facing her own reckoning. The dangerous creditors she'd partially paid with the proceeds from my house were now aware that the money had been obtained fraudulently and might be reclaimed. Curtis, the loan shark who'd received the largest payment, began making threats again. I learned about this when Amanda called me from the county jail, where she was being held pending trial. "He knows about the fraud charges," she sobbed through the prison phone. "He says if the money gets seized as evidence, I still owe him. He knows where Mom lives." Despite everything, I couldn't ignore her terror. With my lawyer's help, I contacted the district attorney handling the case. "This loan shark is a known figure to law enforcement," the DA informed me. "We've been trying to build a case against him for years. Your sister's testimony could be valuable. This presented a potential path forward. Amanda could cooperate with authorities against Curtis and his operation in exchange for leniency in her own case. The decision would require courage, something Amanda had rarely displayed, and a willingness to truly face consequences rather than looking for another bailout. When I presented this option during a jailhouse visit, I expected resistance. Instead, Amanda surprised me. "I'll do it," she said without hesitation. "I'm tired of being scared all the time." For the first time in her adult life, she appeared ready to take responsibility for her actions. The transformation wasn't sudden or complete. She still minimized her role at times and blamed our mother for pushing her into the scheme, but it was a start. My mother, meanwhile, was following a different trajectory. When her initial bail hearing revealed the extent of the evidence against her, she suffered what appeared to be a panic attack in the courtroom. She was taken to the hospital, where doctors found her blood pressure dangerously elevated. "Your mother is asking for you," a nurse told me when I arrived at the hospital after receiving their call. I found her looking small and old in the hospital bed, monitoring equipment beeping steadily beside her. Her usual carefully applied makeup was gone, her hair limp against the pillow. "Calhoun," she said when she saw me, her voice barely audible. "I need your help." Even now, facing criminal charges and health issues largely of her own making, her first instinct was to demand assistance rather than offer apologies. "What kind of help?" I asked, keeping my distance. "Talk to the prosecutor," she pleaded. "Tell them it was all a misunderstanding. I'm your mother." "A mother who tried to make me homeless," I replied evenly. "I was desperate," she insisted. "Amanda was in danger. So you decided I was expendable." She looked away, unable to meet my eyes. "You've always been stronger, more independent." "That doesn't make me less deserving of basic decency," I said, "or maternal love." Something flickered across her face, perhaps the first genuine recognition of the harm she had caused. "I don't know how to fix this," she admitted. "Start by telling the truth," I suggested, "about everything, including what happened with Dad." Her expression hardened. "That has nothing to do with this." "It has everything to do with this," I countered. "You've resented me my entire life because I remind you of him. I deserve to know why." For a long moment, she was silent. Then, finally, she began to speak. "Your father wasn't the saint you think he was," she said slowly. "He was controlling with money, always questioning my spending while building his precious savings. When Amanda was born, he became even more rigid, said we couldn't afford her ballet lessons, her nice clothes. Maybe we couldn't," I suggested. She ignored this. "The night before he died, we had a huge fight. He said he couldn't live like this anymore. Said he wanted a divorce, that he'd only stayed for you kids." "And the next day he had a heart attack," I said. "Yes," she confirmed. "Everyone treated him like such a martyr afterward. Poor Donald worked himself to death for his family. No one knew he was planning to abandon us. Or maybe he was planning to stop enabling financial irresponsibility," I suggested. "The way I refused to do with Amanda." Her eyes flashed with familiar anger. "You don't understand. You've never understood what it's like to struggle." I laughed bitterly. "I've struggled my entire life. The difference is, I didn't make my struggles everyone else's problem." As I left her hospital room, I realized something important. My mother's view of reality was so fundamentally different from mine that reconciliation might never be possible. She truly believed she was the victim in every scenario, including this one. That level of delusion couldn't be reasoned with. When I reached the parking lot, my phone rang. It was the detective handling the investigation. "We found something interesting while executing the search warrant at your mother's house," he said. "A safety deposit box key. The box contains over $100,000 in cash and some financial documents from when you were a minor." "What kind of documents?" I asked, a sinking feeling in my stomach. "College fund paperwork," he replied. "In your name. Looks like your father set it up before he died. According to the bank records we subpoenaed, your mother emptied it the year you turned 18. Another piece of the puzzle fell into place. The money that should have helped me through college had been diverted elsewhere, likely to support Amanda's various failed attempts at higher education and to maintain my mother's lifestyle. This discovery should have increased my anger, but instead it brought clarity. The betrayal I had just experienced wasn't new, it was simply the most recent and most brazen in a lifetime of similar actions. As I drove back to the hotel, I realized that the house, as painful as its temporary loss had been, was just a symbol. The real theft had been ongoing throughout my life, the theft of normal family relationships, of parental support, of the basic security that comes from knowing your family has your back. For the first time, I allowed myself to fully feel the grief of that lifelong loss. And in that grief, paradoxically, I found the beginning of freedom. 3 weeks after my return from Hawaii, Amanda's preliminary hearing was scheduled. I attended, still unsure how I felt about seeing my sister in custody. She appeared gaunt in her orange jumpsuit, her usually perfectly styled hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. When she saw me in the courtroom, she gave me a small, uncertain wave. The evidence against her was substantial. Security footage, banking records, and her own confession left little room for legal maneuvering. Her public defender approached me before the proceedings began. "Your sister has agreed to cooperate with the authorities regarding the loan shark operation," the lawyer explained. "She's providing names, dates, evidence of their predatory lending practices, and intimidation tactics. It's valuable information. Will it help her case?" I asked. "Significantly," the lawyer confirmed. "The DA is considering reducing charges from felony fraud to a lesser offense, with probation instead of jail time, provided she continues cooperating and completes a gambling addiction program." I nodded, relieved despite everything. I didn't want Amanda in prison. I wanted her to get help and make better choices. When it was her turn to speak, Amanda surprised me again. Instead of the defensive posture I expected, she addressed the court with unexpected candor. "I want to take full responsibility for my actions," she began, her voice shaking slightly. "I betrayed my brother's trust in the worst possible way. I let my addiction control me to the point where I was willing to make my own brother homeless." She went on to detail her gambling addiction, how it had started with casual betting in college and escalated over the years until it consumed her life. She described the shame that kept her hiding it, borrowing from increasingly dangerous sources to cover her losses. "But none of that excuses what I did to Calhoun," she concluded. "He was the one person in my life who always told me the truth, even when it wasn't what I wanted to hear, and I repaid him by trying to destroy his life." Her words seemed genuine, though I had seen Amanda perform convincingly before when it served her interests. The judge appeared, moved, but maintained appropriate skepticism. "Your cooperation with authorities regarding the illegal lending operation will be taken into consideration," he told her. "But make no mistake, Miss Parker, the charges against you are serious. You will face consequences for your actions." Amanda nodded, accepting this without protest, another departure from her usual behavior. My mother's case was proceeding separately and with less cooperation. She had pleaded not guilty despite the overwhelming evidence, maintaining that she had believed she had legitimate authority to sell the house. Her medical issues had resulted in her release to house arrest pending trial, an electronic monitor ensuring she remained at home. I visited her once after her release from the hospital. The conversation went poorly. "You're my son," she insisted when I refused to drop the charges. "Family stands together." "You didn't stand with me when you sold my house," I pointed out. "That was different," she insisted. "How?" "You weren't in danger. Amanda was." The circular logic was familiar and exhausting. In her mind, Amanda's needs would always justify any action, no matter how harmful to others. "I want to know about the college fund Dad set up for me," I said, changing the subject. Her expression froze. "What are you talking about?" "The police found the documentation. Mom, Dad set up a fund for my education. You emptied it when I turned 18. For a moment, she seemed genuinely at a loss for words. Then the familiar defenses emerged. "We needed that money for family emergencies," she claimed. "Your father never understood the financial pressures I was under as a single mother." "What emergencies?" I pressed. "Because from what I remember, that was when Amanda got her first car, and when you renovated the kitchen. You were always so good with money," she deflected. "You got scholarships. You didn't need it like we did." I realized then that there would never be a satisfying resolution with my mother. No confession, no genuine remorse, no moment of clarity where she truly understood the harm she had caused. Her reality was too distorted by her own need to be the victim in every scenario. "I'm not going to see you again," I told her quietly. After the legal issues are resolved, we're done. You don't mean that, she said, but her tone lacked conviction. I do, I assured her. I've spent my entire life trying to earn love from someone incapable of giving it. I'm finished. As painful as this realization was, it also brought a strange peace. I was no longer responsible for managing my mother's emotions or meeting her impossible expectations. I was free to build a life based on healthier relationships and genuine connections. The process of reclaiming my house moved forward, though more slowly than I had hoped. The legal complications of unwinding a fraudulent sale, even with the buyer's cooperation, were substantial. In the meantime, I continued staying in Jack's spare room, grateful for his generosity. It's the least I can do, he insisted. I still feel terrible about letting them in. They would have found another way, I assured him. They were determined. Ryan, who had posed as the buyer Thomas Reed, became an unexpected ally in navigating the legal process. His experience in real estate proved invaluable as we worked through the complicated paperwork. The title company is pushing back, he explained during one of our regular update calls. They don't want to admit they failed to verify the power of attorney documents properly. What does that mean for getting my house back? I asked. It means more delays, he admitted. But we'll get there. The law is clearly on your side. Throughout this challenging period, Audrey remained a steady source of support. What had begun as a vacation, friendship deepened into something more meaningful. Our daily phone calls became a lifeline as I navigated the emotional and practical fallout of my family's betrayal. What you're experiencing is actually a form of grief, she explained during one late-night conversation. You're mourning the family you deserved to have but never got. I never thought of it that way, I admitted. I always thought of grief as something that happens when you lose something you once had. You can grieve what you never had too, she said gently. The absence of what should have been there is its own kind of loss. Her insight helped me understand the complex emotions I was experiencing, not just anger at the recent betrayal, but a deeper sadness for the supportive family relationships I had craved throughout my life, but never received. 4 months after my return from Hawaii, Amanda's case reached resolution. With her continued cooperation against the loan shark operation and her commitment to addiction treatment, she received 5 years probation, mandatory gambling addiction counseling, and 200 hours of community service. She would also be required to make restitution for the financial damages caused by the fraudulent house sale, though everyone involved understood it would take years, possibly decades, for her to repay the full amount. The day after her sentencing, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop near my office. She arrived early, nervously waiting at a corner table. Without makeup and expensive clothes, she looked younger and more vulnerable than I remembered. "Thank you for meeting me," she said when I sat down. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure either," I admitted. We sat in awkward silence for a moment. Years of dysfunctional family patterns hanging between us. "I start inpatient treatment tomorrow," she finally said. 30 days. "That's good," I replied. "I hope it helps. The counselor I've been seeing said I need to make amends as part of my recovery," she continued. "But she also said I need to understand that making amends doesn't guarantee forgiveness, and I need to accept whatever response I get." I nodded, surprised by her insight. "That sounds right." "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "What I did, what we did. It was unforgivable, but I want you to know that I understand now how much I've hurt you. Not just with the house, but throughout our lives." For the first time, I saw genuine remorse in my sister's eyes. Not the performative tears she had used so effectively in the past. "Mom always made it seem like you had it easier," she continued. "Like you didn't need her the way I did. It took me until now to realize that wasn't true. You needed her just as much. She just never showed up for you." Her words hit me hard. All my life, I had worked to prove I didn't need the support that was so freely given to Amanda. Hearing her acknowledge this felt like validation of a wound I had carried silently for decades. "I can't undo what I did," Amanda said, "but I'm committed to being different going forward. Whether or not we ever have a relationship again, I want you to know that." As I looked at my sister across the table, I saw something new in her expression, a humility and self-awareness that had never been there before. Rock bottom had forced her to finally face herself honestly. "I don't know what the future holds for us," I told her truthfully, "but I'm glad you're getting help. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was an acknowledgement that change might be possible. For Amanda, that seemed to be enough for now. "Thank you for hearing me out," she said as we prepared to leave. "And Calhoun? I'm so sorry about the house. I hope you get it back soon." As if the universe had been waiting for this moment of genuine contrition, my phone rang just as we parted ways. It was my lawyer. "Good news," he said without preamble. "The title company has agreed to void the transaction. We can proceed with restoring your ownership immediately." After months of legal wrangling, I was finally getting my house back. But as I headed toward my lawyer's office to sign the paperwork, I realized something important. The house, while significant, was just a building. The real victory was in reclaiming my life and my right to define family on my own terms. 1 year after the failed attempt to steal my house, I stood in my kitchen preparing for a housewarming party. The past 12 months had been transformative in ways I never could have anticipated when I boarded that flight to Hawaii. Legally, my mother had eventually accepted a plea deal, receiving 3 years probation and community service. The evidence against her was too overwhelming to risk a trial. As part of the agreement, she was required to attend therapy sessions addressing her narcissistic behaviors and financial manipulation patterns. Whether these interventions would create any meaningful change remained to be seen, but it was no longer my responsibility to monitor or manage her progress. True to my word, I had maintained my distance from her. The legal necessity of interaction during court proceedings had been the extent of our contact. She had sent letters, made phone calls that went unanswered, and even attempted to enlist family friends to plead her case. I remained firm in my boundaries. Some relationships are too toxic to salvage, and I had finally accepted that the mother-son relationship I had always craved was simply not possible with Diane Parker. Amanda's journey had taken a different path. After completing her inpatient treatment program, she had moved to a halfway house and found a job at a local bookstore. Her recovery seemed genuine, though I maintained cautious optimism rather than blind trust. We had occasional coffee meetings where conversation remained somewhat superficial but civil. She respected my boundaries and never asked for money or favors, a significant change from our previous dynamic. The program taught me that making amends is a lifelong process, not a one-time apology, she explained during one of our meetings. I'm trying to live that every day. As part of her court-ordered restitution, she paid me a small amount each month. The sum was symbolic rather than substantial, but her consistency demonstrated a commitment to accountability that I found encouraging. My house had been legally restored to me after 5 months of complicated proceedings. The damage done by the hasty emptying and attempted sale required significant repairs and replacements. Insurance covered some losses, but many irreplaceable items, particularly those connected to my father, were gone forever. Rather than dwelling on these losses, I chose to see the restoration process as an opportunity for renewal. I painted rooms in colors I'd always wanted to try, but had hesitated to use. I replaced the practical, serviceable furniture that had been stolen with pieces I truly loved. The house became more authentically mine than it had been before the attempted theft. The most unexpected development had been my relationship with Audrey. What began as vacation friendship, then long-distance support during crisis, had evolved into something deeply meaningful. 6 months after the Hawaii trip, she had accepted a position at a counseling center in Portland, moving from Chicago to be closer. Now, as I prepared vegetables for the party, she arranged flowers in the dining room, her presence in my home feeling natural and right. "Need any help in there?" she called. "Almost done," I replied, smiling at the domesticity of the moment. The doorbell rang, announcing the first guests. Jack arrived with his wife Sarah, bearing a houseplant to replace one of those lost during the ordeal. "Figured you could start rebuilding your indoor garden," he said. Ryan came next, accompanied by his fiancée Melissa. Though our connection had begun under unusual circumstances, we had developed a genuine friendship over the past year. "Place looks amazing," he commented, looking around at the renovated space. "Better than when I almost bought it." Colleagues from work arrived, along with new friends I'd made through Audrey. The house filled with conversation and laughter sounds that erased the echoes of betrayal that had once reverberated through these rooms. Midway through the evening, an unexpected guest arrived. Amanda stood nervously at the door, holding a small wrapped package. "I know I wasn't invited," she said hesitantly. I just wanted to drop this off." I hesitated, then stepped back to let her in. "You can stay for a while if you'd like." Relief washed over her face. "Thanks. I won't stay long." The package contained a framed photo of our father and me from a fishing trip when I was about 10. I had thought this photo lost forever. "I found it at Mom's," Amanda explained. "I thought you should have it." The gesture, small but meaningful, represented something important. Not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps the beginning of a new, more honest relationship built on respect rather than manipulation. As the evening progressed, I found myself on the back deck with Audrey, taking a moment away from the festive noise inside. "Happy?" she asked, slipping her hand into mine. "More than I expected to be," I admitted. "A year ago I thought I'd lost everything. And instead? Instead I found clarity about my family, about what I want in my life, about the kind of relationships worth investing in." We looked through the windows at the gathering inside, all people who had chosen to support me during the darkest period of my life, or who had entered it afterward, bringing positive energy and genuine connection. When my mother and sister tried to take my house, they thought they were just stealing property, I reflected. They didn't realize they were forcing me to rebuild my entire understanding of family. "And what did you discover?" Audrey asked. "That family isn't defined by DNA," I replied. "It's defined by respect, support, and love that doesn't come with conditions or exploitation. Sometimes, the family we choose is more real than the one we're born into." As the party continued late into the evening, I looked around at the home I had nearly lost and then reclaimed. The experience had been painful beyond measure, but it had also led to this moment surrounded by genuine connections, in a space that felt more authentically mine than ever before. The betrayal that was meant to destroy me had instead forced me to rebuild on a stronger foundation. My mother and sister had tried to render me homeless, but in their cruelty, they had inadvertently led me to find my true home not just in the physical structure around me, but in the authentic life I was now creating on my own terms. As the last guest departed, and Audrey and I began clearing away glasses and plates, I felt a profound sense of peace. The journey hadn't ended. Amanda's recovery would be ongoing. Legal loose ends would continue to require attention, and the emotional scars would take time to fully heal. But for the first time, I was moving forward without the weight of toxic family expectations holding me back. "You know what I've learned through all this?" I said as we finished cleaning. "What's that?" Audrey asked, wrapping her arms around my waist. "That sometimes losing what you thought was irreplaceable leads you to discover what's truly valuable, and that the strongest foundations are often built after everything you thought was solid has been shaken to the core." We stood together in the quiet house, surrounded by the evidence of a life being thoughtfully reconstructed. The betrayal that had been meant to destroy me had instead become the catalyst for something better than I could have imagined, a life authentic to my values, surrounded by people who demonstrated what real family should be. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after a betrayal? The journey isn't easy, but sometimes the foundation you create afterward is stronger than what existed before. I'd love to hear about your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please consider giving it a like, subscribing to hear more stories of resilience, and sharing it with someone who might need to be reminded that even the deepest betrayals can sometimes lead to unexpected blessings. Thank you for listening, and remember that sometimes our greatest strength emerges from our most painful challenges.